Hey there, hope you're doing well. We're going to cover things that are both useful to the player during hunts, and also things with the environment that can benefit the player outside of the hunt during this video. So without further ado, I'm Haderaxe, and here's 10 things and tips you didn't know about Monster Hunter Wilds. Bright Moss is the best slinger type in the game against flyers because it's a guaranteed dunk if you hit them in the face while flying. It also affords you the longest possible window in the game on dunk and is unaffected by buildup resistance. For those new to the series, a dunk is when you knock a flying monster out of the sky. All things like knockouts, mounts, dunks, statuses, etc. have hidden buildups in the background that need to fill up all the way for the desired effect to happen. Certain things like dunks and knockouts will leave the monster on the ground for a long time, but as you continually dunk and knock out a monster, it will remain on the ground for a shorter amount of time. Bright Moss is incredible because it bypasses both buildup and this shortening effect when dunking a monster. One other thing Bright Moss can do that's great, especially if you're running an ambush build for instance, is the ability to get sneak attacks off on monsters mid-combat by shooting them in the face with Bright Moss. Keep in mind though that this will not overwrite the sneak attack timer if you already pulled one off shortly beforehand. Yeah, I ended up first discovering this when I was just messing around with Bright Moss in regular hunts to see if it did anything, and I ended up getting a sneak attack prompt in the middle of a fight against a Guardian Deshagama. Number 9. Did you know that you can fire your slinger without sheathing your weapon? This is incredibly useful as it lets you stagger monsters on the fly, helping you to prevent their escape. You can do this by aiming with focus mode and pressing in your left stick. This isn't the only use case for it though, and honestly I see a lot of players, both new and old, ignore their slinger entirely in this game, which is crazy because it's one of the most useful tools a hunter has at their disposal for controlling the fight. You can interrupt monsters' moves to either save teammates or dunk a monster. It makes using heavy slinger pods that you get from monsters a lot more convenient, and it's also a much faster way of triggering environmental effects and traps. Let's not forget that flash pods are still incredibly strong and can lock a monster in place even if it tries to flee, since they can't leave for the entire duration that they're blinded. This on top of guaranteed dunks and being able to interrupt monster nukes is really strong, and having these at the ready even when your weapon is drawn allows you to very strictly control a fight and how the monster behaves. Number 8. Did you know that you can also equip your mantle while your weapon is drawn and without having to bind it to a radial menu or highlight it in your item bar first? In order to do this, you simply need to hold left bumper and push in your right trigger on controller. This will allow you to pop it immediately when it comes off cooldown, or save it for when an opportunity to dish out a ton of damage presents itself, like on a knockdown. Do note that this is only applicable to your chosen mantle and not your ghillie mantle. Unfortunately, there does not seem to be a shortcut like this for ghillie, but it should always be accessible through your essential item tab in the radial menu in case you need to pop it in a pinch. Number 7. Crystallized Guardians. What you're seeing here is a freshly slain Guardian Deshagama. Unfortunately, I did not record the killing blow as my clipping software only records the past 5 minutes, and it takes exactly 5 minutes for this process to run its course, but rest assured, it was carved only seconds before this clip started playing. Let me speed it up for you so you can see the process. But in order for this process to happen, you need to kill a Guardian monster while they are in a pool of wyvern milk. There's a lot of confusion about how this happens, as it seems to be inconsistent, but I've done extensive and exhaustive testing on this, and it seems that the inconsistency lies with a hitbox bug, where sometimes the monster just isn't registered as being in a pool of wyvern milk. Season does not matter. The state of the monster does not matter. I've seen every Guardian crystallize in every season after killing them immediately after draining the pool, or just as they are arriving at the pool. That's why I believe the inconsistency lies with a bugged hitbox occasionally. Now, you don't need to sit there and wait for your monster to crystallize like I just did. You can hunt something else or explore or whatever else you want to do as long as you don't leave the area and return to it after 5 minutes. You will also know when it's crystallized if you look at the map and see a crystal symbol instead of a rotting symbol over the monster. For those wondering about how precise the monster's death has to be, it's actually very forgiving, as you can see with the Sanjanath kill. It doesn't even look like it's inside the pool, and even though I don't have the footage to show this thing crystallizing, it did indeed crystallize even when this far away from it. It is rather generous. But why should you care? Why does any of this matter? Well, it's because you can actually get really nice melding materials out of it that are used purely for decoration melds. If you're lucky enough to get some coruscating crystals out of your carves, then that is equal to a silver melding ticket for Artian melds. I wouldn't do all this personally for a deco-focused grind, but if you're ever farming monsters or materials in the Wyverian ruins, then you can definitely net yourself a ton of these in the process without much investment, so good to keep in mind. But while we're still focused on Wyveria and Guardians, let's move on to number 6, exploiting Guardian Crystals. Guardian monsters have moves that will sometimes erect Wilk crystals out of the ground, and they will often use these against the hunter, causing them to have delayed explosions when they attack near them. But the hunter can actually use these against the monster as well if they shoot them with an elemental slinger pod, which Wyveria is full of. Now, this is a bit of a cherry-picked clip to show off how they work, but using these during an organic fight is practical, especially if you remember to use your slinger while your weapon is still drawn. These crystals explosions don't do much in the way of damage, but they do impact the fight a ton if you use them to secure knockdowns. In this clip alone, you've seen this Guardian Deshagama get knocked down twice within the span of 30 seconds, which is a very quick time for a standalone source of knockdown. Plus, if you're ever in Wyveria during the inclemency when everything is hatching from their cocoons like crazy, you're going to have a ton of Wyvern Melt crystals laying around from Guardian Sacred skirmishes around the map. These will carry over into Fallow as well, so if the Sacreds aren't actively invading your fights and spawning crystals, make sure to use the remnants of previous skirmishes they had off-screen to your advantage. Number 5, Armor and Power Charms. Now, these are on the list because I had 300 hours in this game without knowing about these, since you crafted them in previous titles, so I just thought they weren't present in Wilds. Turns out, they are, and you get them by doing side quests this time around in high rank. The quest names are Secure Wounded Hollow and As Gatekeeper. After completing these quests, the charms will be sent to your item box, and in order to receive their benefits, you simply need to put them in your item pouch. Once they are in your pouch, they will provide an attack boost of +6 raw attack and an armor boost of +12 defense, so these should remain in your inventory permanently once acquired. As of right now, there is no indication of them being able to get crafted into armor and power talons, unfortunately. Number 4, hiding essential items. While in your tent, you can hover over essential items in your pouch and toggle between showing them and hiding them. You will most likely want to hide these, as hiding them removes them from your item bar in the bottom right, making it less cluttered for you when you're scrolling through in the heat of combat. All of your essential items have a dedicated radial menu anyways that you can access, and only 2 of these will probably be accessed mid-hunt, those being the throwing knife and the ghillie mantle. Number 2, Tempered Wounds. Now, you may all be familiar with what a tempered wound is. It's the blue wounds on tempered monsters, but I see a lot of people that don't fully understand them. They are not random. Tempered monsters have old scars on their body, and they aren't just for visual effect. Attacking these scars will eventually open up a tempered wound. Breaking these wounds, be that through focus strikes or normal damage, will guarantee a topple on the monster unless they are animation locked by something else. Use these to your advantage, as they can make some tempered fights even easier than their normal counterparts if you play your cards right and chain these to almost fully immobilize the monster. Another thing to talk about is that breaking tempered wounds will also yield you a plentiful melding resource called Wyverian Bloodstones. These are used for RT and melding, and the tier of bloodstone you get from popping tempered wounds scales with the tier of the monster, with tempered apexes giving the highest tier. Now, I do think there is an upper limit to the amount of bloodstones you can get from a single monster, so that you incentivize actually killing the monster and not just endlessly popping wounds on it, as sometimes I will stop getting bloodstones entirely during a hunt. But as you can see here, bloodstones provide a large amount of melding points towards tier 8 Artian parts as long as they're tier 7 or above, which is most non-tutorial monster tempered fights. You will basically be drowning in these things as long as you're hunting tempered monsters in general, so don't give in to the widespread sentiment of calling the game Arkveld Hunter, as you do get a respectable amount of materials and ways to get tier 8 Artians outside of purely hunting tempered apexes. Also, you don't get a ton of points for using tier 6 and 7 Artian parts for melding points, but paired with tier 6 and 7 Bloodstones, you'll be able to get tier 8 Artian parts without needing to fight the tempered apexes at all if that's what you want to do. Prioritize hunting what you want to hunt, because you are not forced or even fully encouraged to farm only Arkveld. Your fun comes above all else, and can still be used to get endgame meta Artians and decorations. Number 2, punishable monster moves. This one's a game changer that I'm surprised a lot of people still aren't aware of, but most of, if not all monsters in the game have certain moves that will create a scripted wound. Their entire body part that source the attack will glow red, and landing a focus strike on this glowing part will guarantee a unique knockdown on the monster. These knockdowns are shorter than most knockdowns, but still, it is a knockdown that you can punish, and I call these moves punishable moves. Each move for each monster has a different window that it affords the player to capitalize on. Some are incredibly short, some are very forgiving, but learning these moves can seriously change your hunts, as capitalizing on them will net you a ton of damage over the course of the hunt. Now, these do have an internal timer on them, so you can't just spam them, but they aren't that long of a timer. I'm not sure the exact time on them, but if I had to guess, I'd say every minute or so you're able to pull these off. But yeah, they are strong, and I really do mean it when I say most monsters have these. I think I've only seen 2 or 3 that do not have one. And last, but certainly not least, the Wudwud Cookout. This thing is actually amazing, and I am so happy it's a thing in this game. First off, it has to be nighttime during the plenty season. There is no other conditions other than those two that will allow this to happen. When you travel to the Wudwud hideout during the plenty season and at nighttime, they'll be having a cookout. And this thing is truly incredible, both because it's wudwuds and everything they do is awesome, and because it actually is a massive boon for gameplay purposes as well. I don't know if you just saw that there, but I just got 3 deli shrooms, a high-tier additional ingredient for some godbug essence, an automated resource that you acquire from gatherers over time. That's what I mean by a massive boon. Not to mention, deli shroom is arguably the best additional ingredient in the game because of the black belt food skill. These guys have tons of not only trades, but gifts that they give you around the campfire, and they also have a unique consumable called a charred lizard tail, which cures poison, restores health, and restores stamina, which makes it one of the strongest consumables in the game as well. It's basically an herbal medicine, but better. On top of all that, this is also the place that the oven roast feature from World and Rise went. You can choose raw ingredients or monster parts and turn them into advanced consumables here, and of course, it has its own awesome little cutscene. I really love that something like this exists in the way that it does, as it makes the already dense environments feel even more alive, and I really hope they do more stuff like this in the future. It reminds me a lot of the lynians in World, but a lot more fleshed out here. Seriously hope we get more stuff like this down the line, especially with how secretive it is. I think it's a fun thing to discover. Anyways, that wrapped up my 10 things you didn't know about Monster Hunter Wilds. If you have anything else to add to this list, please let me know in the comments below, as I want to share as much information as we can with as many people as we can. If you found this helpful at all, consider leaving the video a like, as that does help me out a ton, and it means a lot, of course. If you guys are ever interested in hanging out live, I do stream on Twitch, and you can find that in the description below as well. I hope you all have a great day, and I'm Haderaxe, signing out. Peace.